Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chronicles of Hollywood History, past, present, and future. Welcome. And here now, Corey Gomez.
Hello everyone and welcome to Chronicles of Hollywood History, past, present, and future. Today I am joined by the living legend, Michael Myers, Kurt Russell's stunt double. He's done everything. I'm talking about Dick Warlock. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
You're so welcome, Gomez. It's no problem at all.
We met once before, but that was a long time ago. I had hair back then.
And my hair was probably brown back then.
No, it was still gray, sorry. But
yeah.
Better to be gray than bald is what I always say.
Well, that's what my neighbor said, because he's bald.
That's what I say, because I'm bald. So, see, it all works out.
Yeah.
And I've got to ask you the first question I ask everyone. How did you get started in the business?
Now, that question's been answered, on my website it was answered, on my bio it's answered. I mean, if you really want to hear it again, I get real tired of going through it, but I was a young kid, and I moved to California in 1954 when I was 12 years old. I turned 13 a week after I got there. And there was a television program on, this is 1953, there was a television program on called The Range Rider with, Jock Maloney and Dick Jones. Mm-hmm. It was a Western, and I wrote a couple of letters to Flying A Productions thinking that I could be a pretty good double for Dick Jones. But I had no idea how handy Dick Jones was. He's a championship roper, horsebacker, trick rider, you name it. And I didn't know that he had Fred Crone, another stunt buddy, did all the stunts thing, all the fights you see, the horsebacking and the whole thing. So actually Dickie was an enemy to the Stuntmen's Association, which wasn't formed back then, but they used to get the stunt guys upset. But that's the beginning of the story. Well, I always wanted to meet Dick. I got into the guild, the Screen Actors Guild. I was working mucking stalls at a guy's stable, and he wrote, produced, and directed a movie with Marty Robbins, the country singer with, El Paso. Mm-hmm. If you remember that. A lot of people don't remember that song or the singer, but anyway, that he did that, and he wrote me a letter and got me into the Screen Actors Guild, and I bumped along until 65, and I went to Walt Disney's studio to do a lead-in with Walt on his television show, Wonderful World of Color. Well, Walt took a liking to me, and the rest is history. They called me into the studio, and I worked there for 10 years, and that's where I met Kurt Russell, and his dad put me in his contract, and the rest is kind of like, as they say, history. I got into the horror thing because of John Carpenter. The introduction there was Kurt being, his double. They hired me to be the coordinator on Escape from New York, and then I did a number of pictures with them after that. But that was kind of how I got into it.
Before I ask you about Escape from New York, I got to ask, one of the first movies that... you've done so many. It's not one of the first. I think we're in the 20s. A movie that I always liked was the James Caan movie Rollerball. What was it like doing stunt work on a movie like that? It seems like that could be kind of a tough one.
Well, that's the first time I separated my shoulder.
Oh.
Yeah, I was in the best shape of my life back then. I actually was not... the guy that did the hiring on that show was a stunt guy, and he told me later that I was up against Freddie Brookfield, a little stunt guy. They wanted him to go, but when we went for the tryouts, and I wasn't even invited to the tryouts, but another stunt guy said, "Oh, come on over, you're the only roller skater we know of." So I went over, and I used to do a little bit of amateur roller derby and flat track speed club, so they knew that I could get around the track on a pair of roller skates. But so I went to this rehearsal, or not a rehearsal, but a tryout, and unfortunately, I was skating backwards, and Fred was skating forward. He was about 6 feet behind me, and he fell down and broke his hip. And Max Clevin was the stunt coordinator, and he took me aside and he said, Pat, I can't remember his last name, the producer, he was there and he was watching me skate, and he said, I want that kid to go. And Max said, and he said, no, I want him to go. So they had to take me, and by the end of the movie, Max said, I'm glad we brought you along. But I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the work on it. You know, it was right up my alley.
Oh, it's a great film. It's one of my favorite films of all time, actually.
Well, you know how I broke my wrenched my shoulder? I separated it, actually. It was lunchtime, and I'm skating backwards, just fooling around, and one of the stunt guys was laying down on the track. So I thought, well, I'm skating backwards, and I'm going to jump him. So I get right up to him, I jump into the air, and he put his hand up and caught my heel. Down I went, flat on my back, and I wrenched my shoulder so bad that I had to put sponges underneath the shoulder pads to alleviate the pain. But when I went, after I got up from falling down, I went and laid down on a gurney and fell asleep. And this is Monday at noon, and I woke up Wednesday evening in the hospital.
Jesus.
Separated it again on a picture called The Relic. I don't know whether you ever saw that or not.
Is it,
but it was
a horror movie?
No. It wasn't Roger Corman. I think it was a Fox movie, but it was about a thing that mutated into this dinosaur-like creature in a museum.
Oh, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. It just finally got a Blu-ray release in Australia.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, there was a helicopter scene coming in over the city, and a couple of four guys jumped off of the skids of the helicopter. In fact, you can see my head as they're coming in, because the white hair, it just gleamed off the right side of the helicopter. Anyway, I jumped off, and then we broke the window, the skylight, and I was the first guy that rappelled down. And then when I was coming down, this monster jumped into the air and caught me and took me to the ground and then chewed my head off. Well, when we did that, I landed on a table, and we rehearsed it one time on the table, and it worked fine. But then the second time, I must have landed just a little bit awkward, and it separated my shoulder. So that knocked that one out. But I've been pretty lucky as far as injuries go.
Now, I got to ask you, a movie, one of my favorite movies, probably a movie that I have the most special place in my heart for, is Escape from New York. First R-rated movie I ever saw. And, my wife, for our anniversary years ago, got me an original poster that's framed. I always said I was going to get a snake tattooed on my stomach, but I never did that. But I got a dragon instead, so I guess that's the homage. But did you think when you made that film, did anyone imagine that all these years, almost 40 years later, 39 years later, it would still be regarded as such a classic?
No. I mean, it's like people say about Halloween. Did you think about it? No, it was a job at that time. I hadn't seen the first one. We did the second one, but no. Escape from New York, I've always thought it had kind of a classic look, and I'm glad to see that it's recognized that way. I didn't know that, but that's kind of cool.
He filmed that. A lot of that was filmed in like an area that had been burned out by fires. And that is that true? I've heard that over the years.
No, it was a section of St. Louis. Missouri. No, St. Louis. I guess it was in Missouri. It was on the west side. Is that Missouri?
Yeah.
St. Louis, Missouri, where the big arch is. It was right near the arch. There was a train station down there and a mall and those kinds of things. And it was a seedy section of town. And they just went there, the art directors, and then they put that plane in and all that, the look. It wasn't really that bad, but they made it look just set dressing is what it was. But that's where they shot most of the stuff. That theater. The basement of the theater, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And that was Kurt Russell, because I remember him before as the guy in all those Disney movies. That was the first movie he did where he really played like a tough guy. He did a really good job.
Yeah, he did. Well, he was a Disney kid, and I was his double in all of those. And then he did a movie called Elvis.
Yep.
I don't know have you ever seen it?
I have.
Yeah, I thought he was excellent. He called me after it was over about a week later or so. He said, "I got to ask you, man." He says, "I know that you're an Elvis fan." He said, "What'd you think?" And I said, "You nailed it, buddy. I don't think anybody, and nobody since then has nailed it. From Don Johnson to you name it, whoever these guys were that did the, no, nobody could do it like Kurt did. He mimicked him." And I called his house one afternoon, and his sister said he's busy. And I said, it's okay. And he said, well, see if he, no, I better not. He said, he's singing Elvis songs. He said he practices constantly to get the music down and the nuances, and he watches all the videos that Clark gave him. And he did. He's that kind of dedicated guy. He's not a method actor, but he gets into his roles. Look at the movie he did about he's a coach of ice hockey team.
Miracles, yes. Good movie.
Yeah, and he did a heck of a job. Look at The Thing, the character he played in The Thing.
Great movie.
Another rusty guy.
I mean, I give him.
And they're all different,
I mean, here's a guy who, most people that start out as, like teenage or young actors, they don't really go on to much. I mean, he started in them Disney movies. My God, he's in the Fast and the Furious movies now. There's no stopping him.
I know. Do you remember when as a kid it happened at the World's Fair with Elvis Presley?
I do. I remember him as Jungle Boy on Gilligan's Island, though.
Yeah. Well, he was Jamie McFeeters in the television series, The Adventures of Jamie McFeeters, but he was a little boy that Elvis gave him a quarter to kick him in the shin because he wanted to have an injury when he wanted to go to make out with the local nurse at the fair. So Kurt really laid one on him. Anyway, that was one of his first gigs, but he had the Jamie McFeeters thing before that, the series.
No,
so he's been around a long time. And I mean, he just gets better. He's like fine wine. He just gets better, man.
Well, Escape was also, that was your first John Carpenter film too, correct?
Yep.
Then you went on for Halloween, The Thing. I mean, how did they end up putting you in the Michael Myers outfit for Halloween 2?
Well, they were never going to do that. But no, that's another story. When that movie, John went on to something else. He was prepping, I think, The Thing is what he was doing. And Deborah called and said, "We're doing this kind of flick, and we'd like you to be the coordinator." And I said, "Fine." So I came in for a meeting with her, and she said, "I'd like you to go down the hallway and meet Rick Rosenthal. He's the director." So I said, "Sure." So I got up and I started down the hall. And there were a couple of doors, offices. Mm-hmm. And the last one, I looked in there, and as I went by, I glanced at all of them, but there was a desk, a chair, and the mask was laying on the desk. And she had told me about this mask that the guy was wearing, because like I said earlier, I had never seen Halloween, so I didn't know what was up. But she briefed me on the character and what the thing was about. So I went in there, got the mask, and put it on, and I went and stood in his doorway. And he said, "Who are you?" And I didn't answer him, but I just stared at him. He said, "Who the hell are you?" And I just continued to stare. And then finally I took the mask off as I walked to his desk and I said, "I'm Warlock, and I'm here to talk to you about being a coordinator on your movie." So we talked for a little bit. He said, "Yeah, great, you got the job." And I got up and started to walk away. I said, "Thank you very much." And I started to walk away. I kind of glanced at the mask and I held it out, and I turned around and looked at him. I said, "Is there any reason I can't play this guy?" And he looked me up and down. He said, "I don't care if Deborah doesn't care." So I walked back down the hall and I asked Deborah, and she said, "Sure, yeah, if he doesn't care, it's okay with me." So that's how I got the job.
How was Jamie Lee Curtis?
Sweet. I had a crush on her.
Oh, I still do.
Well, I was married, and she knew that, but I think had I not, maybe I could have, dated her a few times. I don't know.
You'd be one lucky man.
When I saw her at Horror Hound, I think up in where the heck was it, Chicago or someplace, for a Hound convention, and I was in the elevator with my wife, and going up, like, I don't know where we were, what floor we were on, but the door was open, and she was standing there ready to get on, and she looked, and she goes, Warlock! And then she treated me, like, really nice. You know, and I was sitting in the audience, I wanted to go in and see what she was doing with the fans, and she said, "You're just as handsome as you always were." Like, you know. Anyway, yeah.
Did you?
That was an experience. She was really a trooper. I'll tell you, she was kind of new in the business, and she had that. I just saw that movie the other night with a friend. He got it on that new 4K high-tech digital blowout number,
yeah.
And I watched that, and I remember commenting that all she had on was that little nighty thing, the hospital gown.
Hospital gown, yeah.
And, crawling around on her hands and knees out on the parking lot and climbing over the stuff. You know, she was gutty. Really gutty little lady.
Now, my favorite of all the Halloween movies, in fact, my favorite horror movie of all time, is actually the one without Michael Myers, Halloween 3: Season of the Witch. And I remember you were the stunt coordinator on that one as well, correct?
And I was the assassin. I was the guy that had the orange stuff coming out of my mouth, and I thought that, you know, Tom Atkins was an actor. I was one of those clones. I was in it several times. In fact, I get beat up. He pulls wires out of my stomach.
Okay, I
and
know
yellow stuff comes out of my mouth. Yeah, and I get into an elevator, or I'm in the elevator as they're going upstairs. I sneeze, and after the strangers, he looked at me again, you know.
Why is it you think that film was so hated when it came out, and now it's actually appreciated for as amazing as it is? Do you think it's just because they didn't have the Michael Myers character in it?
That's what I've always heard. Yeah.
I think it's the best horror movie ever made.
I thought it was a pretty good standalone film myself.
It's amazing.
I like it.
I love it. I've never seen a better horror film ever.
It's a good one.
I mean, you had The Thing. Was The Thing a tough shoot? That seems like it'd be a lot of work for that film.
Yes and no. The weather, you know, the cold and that kind of stuff. Because we were right up on the glacier up there, and when it was cold outside, it was cold inside too. On that set. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was cold. It really wasn't hard for me, other than the physical part, as far as the cold, dealing with that. But everything else, I mean, the only real stunt I remember doing was, and I didn't do it, but Tony Caesar did it. I lit him on fire. And the thing with doubling the tall guy, what the heck, the one who was actually ended up being the Thing.
Yeah. I can't remember the actor's name, but yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and the guy flew up to the ceiling. I was the guy that doubled him. I'm 5'8", and he's 6'1" or something, but you couldn't tell. You know, and how we did that, it was just a reverse. They hung me in the air, and they had a ceiling piece on the floor, and on cue, the effects guy cut me loose, and then boom, I fell on my back on the floor.
No.
Yeah, and it looked like I went up, backwards under the ceiling. But if you look real close, you see a little piece of styrofoam jump off the ceiling and then go back to the ceiling. And that's because it really bounced off the floor and went back on the floor.
I have that on the Blu-ray. I'm going to have to watch that again.
Yeah. At impact, you'll see as soon as the guy hits it, you'll see a little piece of white foam. Styrofoam.
You did with John Carpenter again. I mean, you did Christine with him as well, if I'm correct.
Well, I don't think I was ever on film. I don't think. See, that was after my demise with Deborah Hill up in Canada. And once the word got out about that one, none of that crew ever had anything to do with me after that. The stunt coordinator on Christine was a friend of mine. And so he hired me on the show, but I went, but they let me go right away. They said, hate to tell you, but you gotta leave. You gotta, you're out of here.
Do you mind if I ask what the falling out was?
Well, Deborah's not here to defend herself, so it was over a guy that was doing something on the show that I disagreed with, and it had to do with a stunt that I was involved in with some little people, and it's a safety issue. As it turned out, it was okay. It was like the thing I left on emergency. I left the show there because of a safety issue, and they did it anyway with somebody else. And as I understand it, they put all the safety features in that I was asking for when I left. What? Well, there were 3 of us that left on emergency. But that's what it was on that show. It was just a difference of opinion on what to do and how to do it, and it was him or me.
Well, you got to go back with John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, though, in Big Trouble in Little China.
No.
Because Kurt talks about you in the commentary of the film.
Well, yeah, but I think that movie was before the one I did in Canada. I think. The one in Canada was called Dead Zone.
The Stephen King film. Dead Zone was actually before Big Trouble, I think, or they might have been filmed around the same time. They all kind of... No, I think Dead Zone might have been a few years earlier. Yeah, Dead Zone was 83, Big Trouble was 86.
Well, when I got back from Dead Zone, the producer who was... His name is Larry Franco, and he's on a lot of Kurt's pictures, either as a producer or associate producer. He goes all the way back as Kurt's stand-in because he was Kurt's brother-in-law at one point. He's not now, but he was. And he said, let's do lunch, Dick. So we met on Ventura Boulevard at a cafe there, and he said, well, what the heck went on up there in Canada? So I told him, and he said, man, I can't ever hire you again. I said, what? And he said, no, it's like a wagon wheel. There's a lot of spokes that come out from the center of the wagon wheel, and, the word's out, so I can't hire you anymore. And I don't know how I got on Big Trouble. I was only there. It was on a daily situation. They called me to come in daily, not because Kurt was still in my corner. He was at that point. Mm-hmm. And then later on, I did him real dirty, so I didn't double him after that.
Because in the commentary, there's like a scene where I think it's one of the bad guys, and I don't remember his exact words, but he's like, "Oh, there's old Warlock," like that. You're complimentary, but he does mention you in the commentary of Big Trouble. He mentioned you in the commentary of Escape from New York too.
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't have those particular DVDs, but I understand he does.
Yeah, like very complimentary.
Pardon me?
It was very complimentary. I know you could tell he genuinely likes you when he was doing the commentary.
What's funny, like we separated part of the company, on Tango and Cash.
Great movie.
And you remember that movie, right?
Oh, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I did some work, and then I decided to leave there for political reasons or whatever. But he was on the Johnny Carson. I think it was Johnny Carson. It may have been Dave Leno. Jay Leno, his show. But either way, they got to talking about him and his stunts. You were pretty good doing your own stunts. Who's your stunt man? Oh, Dick Warlock. And he couldn't remember John Casino's name, who was his stunt man after that. I heard about it. I've never seen it, but I heard it the way it was relayed to me. He was a little bit embarrassed. And they kind of chuckled, and then they went on. But yeah, out comes my name.
Well, you worked with him for a long time.
Yeah, I say 25 years, but I don't know where I got that figure. I must have misfigured when I talked about it. It wasn't quite that long. I think it was about, I don't know, 22 or 20 or something like that. But
Tango and Cash, I've never figured out why there was never a part 2.
I think there's personalities. I'm not sure, but
it made money. People love it. I mean, Stallone is notorious for making as many sequels as he can. I was always kind of surprised that they never, revisited that as popular as it was.
Yeah, I can't tell you.
Do you talk to Kurt anymore?
No. I've tried. Mike McGreevy, he played Skyler on all those Disney, or a lot of the Disney movies about the gangs, the gang of kids, and and he was his partner, a little redheaded guy. He and I have done several conventions together, and he's had him on the phone when I'm standing right there. I said, "Ask him if he'll talk to me." No.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
You never know. He could have you in the next Fast and the Furious film.
No. So he's doing Fast and Furious. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he plays Mr. Nobody. So yeah, he was in Fast and the Furious. What, 7?
Mr. Nobody.
Yeah, 7 and 8.
From Jamie McFeeters to Mr. Nobody. I don't believe it.
That's what I said. And and he had the Tarantino movies. He had the Death Proof and the terrible movie, and Hateful Eight, another terrible movie. But he's and the fact that the guy hardly ever ages, I think, helps him too. So.
Well, he's got those dimples that never go away.
and I'll tell you, if that really was his mustache in Tombstone, that's one magnificent mustache, because I could not get it to look that good without wax.
He's got a good one. And I thought he was Dynamite in Tombstone.
Oh,
that's another, that's a whole total different character than anybody, the Tango and Cash character, or Snake Plissken, or any of those guys. They're all different.
Snake Plissken's, I think, always going to be my favorite.
Well, it was a good movie. I like the character.
Another movie you were in that I really liked was Angel.
Angel.
And
I'll be darned.
And I love it.
You're just a real catalog of movies, aren't you?
I have the poster for it in my garage because I love the fact that the left side is honor student by day, and then the right is Hollywood hooker at night. The way they split it, I think that I talked to Barry Pearl not that long ago, who was in part 2, and I know those movies, they were so trashy in the day, and they're just comically funny now. That was a Corman film, wasn't it?
Yes, I believe it was. Yeah, and I'm trying to remember Robert. Trying to remember the director's name. He was a nice guy. My son Lance was in that
O'Neill, Robert Vincent O'Neill.
That's it. Yep, nice man. And I did, like I just said, my son Lance was in that one too. The guy that was the boombox boy in Halloween 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was also in part 3.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Nobody knows it. But you remember the part when I ripped the guy's head off, that bum that was hanging out in the trailer with the cheese?
Yes.
Yeah, well, just before that, or maybe it was right after that, you see a car go by, stops and backs up. They were looking for me. Mm-hmm. Or looking for him or something. Anyway, Lance had to double the guy in the passenger seat because he got sick or something, couldn't show up, and Lance was with me just tagging along. That's the same way he got the job of the boombox boy in Halloween 2. He was there with me that evening in wherever that little town is near Pasadena. When John came in, and I said, "Who's going to do this little kid?" And he said, "I don't know." And how about Lance? Yeah, that works. So they put him in this stuff, and he did that part. But he had to double this guy that didn't show up on part 3, 3. And so he did pretty good. And then my oldest boy, Billy, he was in part 2 too. Well, I sure jump around here, don't I?
Hey, I mean, all those Angel movies blend. I got the box set, and I can't distinguish one from the other, to be honest with you. They even have the same posters.
But there was a guy that played a cop in that, and he came to the set with a loaded pistol and aimed it toward the camera in a scene. He
Jesus.
ran out of a doorway with another guy, and they hid behind something they were going to shoot. And I spotted what looked to me like bullet tips in the chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And I hollered, cut, and I said, hold it just right where you are, point the gun up in the air, or something. And I went over to him, and let me have your weapon. I looked at it, and he's got live rounds in this gun.
My
Boy,
God.
you talk about a guy that got his butt chewed, and I turned him into the Union for that.
You know, let me switch real quick, because we talked about this years ago when we met, because unfortunately the tragedy was pretty recent. It had just happened, I think, a few months prior, when you said the bullets in the chamber. On The Crow, when Brandon Lee got shot,
Right.
was that what they were kind of doing, just taking would they just take the bullets and empty the gunpowder out, or did they use actual blanks back then?
No, well, it depends. Sometimes they would just use the primer with a little baby powder in it, and down the barrel, and that would create the smoke. But really, they had 5-in-1s, which fit a lot of different guns, and then they had blanks for 38s. But it was just a piece of wad and a little bit of powder, depending on what was the gun aimed at. If it was aimed away from camera out into nowhere, then he would put a full load blank, which is full of powder, with a wad in the end of it. And they'd fire it just like a live round, and it would make a loud noise, and smoke would come if it had smoke. Usually they used smokeless powder in a 38 because they didn't use the old black powder like the cowboy guns did. Mm-hmm. Then they would have a quarter load, a half load, and a full load. The 5-in-1s fit 5 different weapons, one bullet. They go 45, 44, 40, 44. But there were 5 different guns that it would fit. Being a blank, and they had quarter loads, half load, and full load. And depending on if you were shooting near people or on a sound stage, they'd use a quarter load, which wasn't near as loud or nasty, when it came out the other end of the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
So, did I get lost on that one?
No. So, what do you think happened to Brandon? What was it that got him when it hit?
Well, I know what I heard, but I wasn't there, so I don't know how much is fact and how much is fiction. Mm-hmm. They were using what they called dummy ammo. There was no powder in the casing. The primer had been punctured, so it didn't fire. And there's a lead that you see when the chamber turns. You can see the lead from the bullets, the noses of them, and that's how I spot them in that one guy's 38. Those are called dummy loads. Well, what they had were dummy loads, and in messing around with the gun or whatever, one of the bullets came out and stuck in the barrel. Okay? Mm-hmm. And the next day, now they put in a blank behind that bullet. Well, it ended up when they cocked it and fired it, or he did, Brandon, that he rolled a blank in right behind the bullet. And when he fired it up at his head, it went into his brain and got him. That's what I heard. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many stories might be out there about it, but
not a lot.
The only guys that really know are the ones that investigated the case.
Yeah. He was an upcoming, well, of course, son of Bruce Lee, martial artist. Another martial artist who I was sure was going to be the next big thing, but wasn't, but I still am a great admirer. You got to do stunt work on Jeff Speakman's first film, The Perfect Weapon.
Whose first film?
Jeff Speakman, the Kenpo guy.
Well, I didn't know that I was that lucky.
Yeah.
I don't even know who that is, and I don't remember ever meeting him or working with him on his show.
Branscombe was in that one too.
Oh, well, I've done a lot of shows where you go in and you do work a second unit somewhere. You may know the coordinator because that's how you're on there. And you work one day and you're out, and you don't really meet the actors, the director, the nobody, and the call sheet may have a fictitious name on it. And I know they used to do that with all the Elvis movies. They didn't put down Elvis Presley starring as so-and-so. It was always Joe Dopes or, some phony name because they didn't want people hanging out. But there's a lot of call sheets, not a lot, but there used to be call sheets that they wouldn't put the actual name.
Mm-hmm.
Of what it's going to be called because they didn't want visitors. Well, they're looking for work like me.
That's smart. You get all the fans, keep them away there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was hoping you'd have some good stories about that, but yeah, because I remember James Lew said he got the crap beat out of him in that film. So, what you could tell on camera, that was not a pulled punch kind of fight that those guys had.
Really?
Yeah, he said, that he was so new to the business, Jeff Speakman, that when they started hitting each other, he was like, we just started hitting each other. So, and I've heard that about a handful of fights in films from people I've talked to, like, no, we just beat each other up.
Whoa. What was the guy's name that was in Kung Fu?
David Carradine.
David was nasty to the stunt guys.
Really?
Oh, he would haul off and whack people. George Wilbur told me he got whacked several times, and Greg Walker. You know Greg?
No, that one I don't.
Yeah, he was a coordinator on that show, and he could tell you stories about Carradine. And I did at least one convention with him, and he's kind of an arrogant fella. He's not real nice to the fans, and he forgets how he got where he got.
Now, did you ever get to work with another guy, and I have to say this because I've heard that he can be a little rough on stuntmen. Did you ever get to work with Steven Seagal?
No, and I'm kind of glad. I love the story. You know about Gene LaBelle, right?
Yes, I do know that story. I've also heard about some other stories, too, about some aftermath of that.
I don't know what you heard, but I heard that Seagal said, none of your stuntmen buddies will ever work on my show.
I have heard that someone did come on. I don't know the film. I believe the story came on and said, he introduced himself, hello, and said, he trained with Gene LaBelle. And I guess Seagal, when it came time for them to do something, just hauled off and hit him as hard as he could and broke like 3 of this poor guy's ribs.
Yeah, that's the kind of guy he was.
I don't like that.
I don't either. That's why I said I'm glad I didn't work on his show. I don't want him hurting me.
No denying he's a tough guy. Two tough guys. Do you remember, you're listed as doing stunt work on the movie Tough and Deadly with Rowdy Roddy Piper and Billy Blanks.
Do you know, did I get screen credit on that?
You did, yes.
I was a bus driver. I could never remember the name of that show. What's it called?
Tough and Deadly, one of my favorite action films.
Tough and Deadly. Well, I know Blanks. He's that black guy, right?
Yeah, he's amazing.
Well, he come up a hill and came out on the road and fell down, and I had to stop the bus.
Yes. Yep, that's what he got attacked. Yep.
You remember that?
I do. Yep, that's right in the opening, right after he takes out a bunch of crooked CIA guys.
That was a different kind of. I never talked to the guy. We never engaged each other. He just knew that this clown was coming down the road in a school bus and was going to run him over if he didn't get stopped. And I wasn't too far away from him when I rolled the bus up to a stop there. No. If I remember correctly, was it scary?
No, he had gotten drugged. He came, you stopped, and then it was a real quick scene. And then he had gotten out of the car. Then shortly after that, it cuts to where you get introduced to Roddy Piper's character.
Okay. Tough and the Deadly, did you say?
Tough and Deadly, yeah. It's a great movie.
I get residuals for it, but I didn't think I was ever in a movie called Tough and Deadly.
Tough and Deadly. I had to, so I could own it on DVD, I had to import it from England. It's only got a VHS release here in the States, and I needed that one on DVD. Hopefully somebody picks it up on Blu-ray one day.
Wow.
I take my
How did
collection.
you meet Branchcombe?
I interviewed him, and when I was going through interviewing all the Renegade cast members, I got to interview him, and we just hit it off.
Okay.
Yeah, because I went through Lorenzo, then Kathleen, and then everybody's like, "Well, you can't do a Renegade interview without Bobby Sixkiller," and I was like, "I'm trying to get him," and then Kathleen gave him my phone number, and we connected after that. What was your first film with him?
Something in Hawaii. He said the name of it, but I can't remember what it was. But I think it was his first venture into the stunt community, and he had to do something. He got thrown over a bar, as I remember it, and he'd never done anything like that before. And so I helped him set up the stuff that he was going to fall on when he went over the bar.
No.
And we just hit it off. He's an easy guy to get along with. He doesn't know a stranger.
No. Now, is it true that Tom Selleck used to sleep on your couch?
No, I have a Tom Selleck story, but it's not about sleeping on my couch. Oh, shoot. No, we had the same business manager at one time, and this is when Tom was, he'd do a recurring role on Rockford as some guy in a white suit and drove a fancy car or something, and he'd just done some menthol cigarette commercials, and that was about it. And the business manager came to me and she said, "Listen," she said, "would you loan Tom some money? And I said, "What do you need?" "He needs $3,600 to pay his rent and pick up a few bills." And I said, "Sure, you can give it to him." So I loaned him $3,600. And about a year later, as far as I know, she said, "Oh, he paid me back, or he paid you back." I never saw it in my checking account or anything. She handled all that stuff, you know what I mean? I don't know. So I get a call. I thought, well, later on when he got Magnum and got real popular, I thought, well, maybe he'll ask the coordinator, who's a friend of mine, to have me over there and double that ball guy or somebody. Mm-hmm. And one day I get a call, and it's not from him. It's from, in fact, he had nothing to do with me being over there. It was Bob Miner that did it. And I won't go into the rest of the story, but anyway, it was never any. We were never close after that.
Gotcha.
We weren't before that, but I did loan him my gun and holster to learn to handle a gun on Sackett's when he was going to do that Sackett series. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he
He's a nice guy. He was nice. Whenever I'd see him at the office, we always had nice words with one another.
So he didn't take real good care of you when he got onto Magnum?
No.
Yeah.
No. And I always thought, well, you crumb bum, it didn't hurt you. It wouldn't hurt you to say, hey, bring Warlock over. I haven't seen him for a while.
Yeah, let him come hang out in Hawaii for a little while.
Exactly. That's what Steven Spielberg used to do for a friend of ours. He'd take him wherever he went, and he didn't have to work. He just went over and got on salary and hung around with Steven.
Well, I'm sure being especially back then, doing that's probably like a paid vacation.
Oh yeah. But I got to do one episode.
Now you're listed as a stunt double for Kurt Russell in Unlawful Entry, which is well past the Carpenter years in '92. Were you still with him at that point?
No, and I don't know why I'm there. I remember walking on the set, and I realized that they were getting ready to do a fight scene, as a matter of fact. And so I watched from a distance that they did that, but no, I wasn't on that. And I don't know how I ever got my name in the credits.
It's, another two that you were in the credits for. Do you have any memories of The Beastmaster with Mark Singer?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, you've got to get nice residuals for that, considering to this day it's still on every day.
No, I don't think I've had a... Have I ever had a residual from Beastmaster? No, I don't think so.
Well, I'll tell you, it's coming out for the first time ever on 4K this holiday season, so it could be coming.
Wow. Yeah, I did a couple of those. But I had a similar experience with Adam 12. I did a number of Adam 12s years ago, and I was in Florida on some show down there at Stunt 7 or something, and every day I'd see this on, TV down there, Adam 12. So when I came back, after a period of time, I was checking with the guild and said, hey, they're running Adam 12 down there in Florida, and I said, I haven't seen a residual from them. And they said, really? I have no record of those being shown. Are you kidding me? I said, look in the TV guide. It's in the TV guide. Well, I don't know. I don't have a record of them being shown, so there's no residuals due you, Mr. Warlock.
Yeah.
So, that's how that goes.
Well, now, do you did a couple Married with Children episodes, didn't you?
Yep. Yeah, 4 of them, I think. Yeah, Frank Lloyd. What a guy.
And you did a lot of Kolchaks as well. Am I correct?
No, I did one called what was it? Ripper, the Ripper.
Oh, that's the most popular one with the guy on the motorcycle.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's like the headless horseman.
I got the show. I got the DVD of it. I just wanted to see what I looked like doing. I didn't know you were. Oh, I always thought you were straight, Kolchak. When I arrested him.
Yeah. No,
I thrown over by I landed on Regina Parton. She was the gal doubling the cop, the lady cop, who was going to arrest him for indecent whatever.
It's so funny because the show, like everybody's like, and the show was ahead of its time. So ahead of its time, it lasted not even a full season, but. You look at all those shows that are out now, like the X-Files and Supernatural and all this stuff, and may have never happened without the Darren McGavin Kolchak show. I always think I think that's a show that really belongs in history, in my opinion.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I still watch it occasionally on the set that I have, the Kolchak set.
Do you have any memories of the episode you were in of The Master with Lee Van Cleef playing a ninja?
The Master. I remember the name and I remember Lee, but I don't remember what I did.
I liked the show when I was a little kid. I actually have the Blu-ray, but I always found it funny when it came time for the ninja scenes and the mask would come on that Lee Van Cleef was suddenly about half a foot taller and seemed to be about 15 pounds more muscular. I always found that very amusing.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually about 2 inches shorter than Kurt. And my head is shaped. It's small around from my jaws down, or my ears down to my chin, and larger going up toward the top of my head. Kurt's is just the opposite. He's got a narrow head and a big jaws and a big chin. And there's a still photo of he and I from Escape from New York right after we did the Texas switch, where I come down the wall and drop behind a Jeep and he gets up and walks out.
Do you think you guys will ever talk again?
I hope so, but I doubt it.
I'd call him for you, but I don't have his number.
Yeah, I don't either. I had all of his numbers because, like I say, he used to call me, or we'd talk once in a while. What's going on? Well, I got something coming up, but it's a ways off, or whatever.
Yeah. My favorite movie, which ironically is not a weird horror action movie, is actually Casino, and you did some stunt work in that, correct?
I did one scene. It was not a stunt. It was a silent bit, what they used to call them silent bits. De Niro gets on the phone because he's walking along and he dropped something and went down to pick something up off the floor, and he spots this cowboy cheating at 21.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I was Armstrong, the guy that he called. And I come, and he tells me what's going on, and I walk over, and I slip the plot out of my sleeve and stick it into his arm and give him the what for.
That was...
I had a the big Kathy saw that in the movie house, said, a big head close-up from my husband. It's huge on the screen, you know.
That's such a good movie, and I like LQ Jones. It was cool to see him. It was cool to see him pop up in there. He didn't get a, just like when I'd see him on Renegade with Lorenzo and Branscombe. It's always nice to see him pop up in something.
Oh yeah, I used to see him. Well, I see him once in a while in Gunsmoke, but in Virginia, and he was a regular on Virginian for at least a season. And he's done so much work. And yes, he's one of my favorite cowboy types.
You like the westerns and that. Did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Tarantino film?
Yes, and I liked it a lot.
That was my favorite movie of the last year, and that was very good. I'm surprised you haven't popped up in the Tarantino movie yet.
Me?
Yeah.
Me or Kurt?
You.
Kurt's
already done two of them. I'm surprised you haven't. He hasn't brought you in for something.
No, I'm a nobody, man. What are you talking about? I'm a guy that falls on his head to make a living. I'm not an actor.
He seems to like all the classic Stuntman and everything like that. I'm surprised he didn't have you pop up in something yet.
Well, I don't think he knows who I am.
Once again, I'd let him know, but he and I don't talk.
Really?
No, I've never met Tarantino. I'd like to. I think it'd be fun, but or annoying. I can't tell. I think he and I are kind of similar, where we could get on each other's nerves quick.
You don't seem like the kind of guy who's going to get on somebody's nerves, though.
Oh, if I start talking about movies too much, I can get a little out there.
Well, you mean you don't think he would?
I think
Unless maybe it's his movies.
Yeah, that's and as much as I hate to say it, the only movie he made that I really didn't like is the one Kurt's the star of.
Well, I understand not too many people did. Somebody told me that it was really awful. It's depressing and, that kind of thing. I'd like to see it sometime just to see what he did in it.
It's 3 hours long, and there's like parts where it goes 10 minutes and no one talks. I can't look at Kurt Russell and Sam Jackson in a stagecoach for 10 minutes straight, just hearing the bumps of the wheels. It was the movie was too long. I get why people liked it, but I also understand why some people don't. 3.5 hours is asking a lot of time for a Western movie where the locale is a cabin.
Yeah, or a stagecoach.
Yeah. Half was the stagecoach, half was just like a little bar-like cabin thing. That's a long time to ask of, a superhero movie. They're at least flashing around in capes for 3 hours. I can handle that.
Yeah. Huh.
I've taken up a lot of your time. I want to ask you before I let you go relax. Do you have any advice for people that want to get into the stunt business right now and this time?
Well, I used to say don't waste your time because CGI is going to take over. But I don't. I'm sorry I told some kids that because, that really wasn't right of me to offer that kind of an opinion without really knowing fully what's going on now. There's an awful lot of places for people who want to get into that business because they still do a lot of live action. They do a lot of wire work with actors where they can put those guys into situations that you couldn't normally put anybody into just because they're on wires, doing flips and turns and hanging upside down and all that kind of stuff, jumps from one building to another. And now they CGI the wires out, so they can put them on cables, and they're perfectly safe. But the riggers are now considered part of the stunt community, and and they get paid with residuals even though they're not photographed. But those guys that go in and rig all these actors and these trick things, so there's room there. And then there's also room for, like I say, live action. So if you got a dream on your heart like I had, go for it. All you can do is give it your best shot, and if God's in your corner and that's His will, you're going to make it. But you got to have faith and talent too. That's what I told my son when he got a break and was going to go in on a show to do, be an actor. He started out as a stunt guy, but that didn't last too long. But I said, Billy, be ready, because it's a short walk from the front door to the back alley. Mm-hmm. You're in and out that quick. If you're not ready, don't do it. So be ready for whatever happens. When you go in, do the best you can do. And be ready for it. Yep. So that's all I can say to these guys and women. There's a gal on American Ninja Warrior, Jessie Graft. I don't know whether you've ever seen that show or not.
Oh, yeah, my son's a fanatic for it.
Well, she's a Hollywood stunt girl, and I don't know whether she was an athlete before she became, a ninja warrior before she became a stunt person, or it was the other way around. But she's a top quality stunt gal now.
But
anyway, yeah.
Another thing I have to say at the end here is you mentioned, on your website. What is your website for all your fans out there?
DickWarlock.com.
Do you have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of that stuff?
No, I tried that, but it's like trying to get on Skype. You got Microsoft and Google that own the airwaves and everything you do. Well, your password doesn't work anymore. Sign in as a new name and just one thing and another. I mean, I've been using Skype for years, and all of a sudden now you got to jump through hoops to get on, and I couldn't get on, so I could do this interview with you.
Yeah,
I hope it works for you this way. It's easier to double with each other on this, and I hope we haven't. Well, I know we've done it some part of the time, but I hope it's clear enough that you can get a decent interview out of it.
I'm going to tell you what, 99% of my interviews are done exactly like this, and I've never had a problem. It's just easier for people just to sit back and turn on their phone, and I try to make it as easy for people as I can.
Yeah. I don't know how many of these I've turned down. I think this is only the second one on the telephone that I've ever done.
Oh, I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I don't like to do them anyway. it's like the question, how'd you get to be a stuntman? Well, if you can research it. It's all out there. I've answered the same questions over and over and over. Mm-hmm. And I doubt that anybody that tunes into your thing I doubt that they haven't heard that story already.
I got a lot of rabid horror fans, and I think they're gonna enjoy hearing you again.
Oh, well, that's cool.
I can
God bless them, boy. If it wasn't for them, Corey, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I'd be working pumping gas someplace. I'm smart enough to know I'm not an educated guy as far as schooling academically. I've got smarts from the street, but I'm a 10th grade dropout, which I'm not proud of. I should have gone on and gotten college, but I don't think I could have afforded it back then. My parents were not wealthy. We came from a family that, was not well off, let's say.
Yeah, same here.
And,
same in my case, too. I never finished college.
Yeah. So, God was in my corner, and He gave me my wish to be in the entertainment industry. I love to sing. I would love to have been an actor if I was better at it or didn't. There was an incident at this place called Corbinville out in California where I first started doing live shows back in 1956. And the guy wanted me to get up on stage and sing Hound Dog. And I had never sung in front of anybody or rehearsed the song enough, and I got up there and kind of messed it up a little bit with the music, and people started giggling, and I got terrible stage fright, and it's haunted me my whole life.
Well, I think you've done a hell of a job in everything you've been in, if that means anything.
Well, I can do one or two lines and get shot and fall down. That's what I do.
and you know what? You do it just fine.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
And I want to thank you once again for joining me here today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. I'm glad I could do it for you and, that rathead out in Hawaii. Yeah, Branscom's a cool dude, and, he's a charm in my life. I had him on a locket with all my other charms, Elvis is one of them, and Kurt's another.
And Branscom.
Branscom. The three people that I always wanted to meet were John F. Kennedy, and I met him, Muhammad Ali, and he knocked me on my butt once, and Elvis. And I got to meet him a couple times and worked with him once, and, that's cool. So I got to sing on the soundtrack of one of his movies.
Very cool.
Oh yeah, they heard me singing and walking around after they started playing it. It was the track that he sings to, and after between takes, and after they at the end of the day said, we'd like to ask you to stay after and sing. There's about a half a dozen of you that we want to stay and sing on the soundtrack, and I said I'd be glad to. I mean, what else could I ask for, to sing a song with Elvis? So I sing in the background of that. And they gave me a little card thing. There's a piece of foam core with the paper stuck to it with the lyrics on it. I still have it to this day. It's one of my treasures.
Nice.
So anyway, thank you, sir. It's been fun. God bless you. Take care. And hello to all your fans out there.
Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. You have been listening to the Chronicles of Hollywood History. Thank you from Gomez Richmond Productions.